Have you ever noticed that many good things happen? Have you ever asked yourself why or how? Or do you just simply experience it and say, one good thing just happened? I'm curious because I believe that the more emphasis we put towards understanding how that just happened and why that just happened, but from a mechanism perspective, that moment in time where it actually occurred, if we can become increasingly more aware of that experience, then the experience itself will actually start to generate more experiences for us to have. I believe strongly that good things can happen on a constant. Not only could happen, but do happen. And I put those two together for a really important reason. Because often it is all depending on the perception of the individual who is experiencing, on whether or not the experience could happen or is it continuously happening. And it's helpful to get a little bit more refined with our observation of this experience itself, so that we can really see the truth of its meaning, the experience, and what it is attempting to express or explain. And I am including all experiences within my expression, not necessarily just the big ones. But I'm also including the experience of the in and out breath. I'm also including the experience of just finding comfort within the body, or standing up and feeling true alignment, just simply from the skeleton, or the sensation of your heel and toe connecting to the floor. Now, these things happen on a consistent basis, and it is a good thing. It's a good thing because it keeps us alive, it keeps us upright, it keeps us moving, but there is a related sensation that's connected to it. And what's profound to me is that if one experience is challenged, let's say a leg, for instance, so one cannot really stand up straight, well, then we always have something else that's happening to reinforce or develop our relationship to that which is good. This is really important because right beside that constant of goodness, there's the potential for the latter. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. So the opposite of something great happening is then something that's in a challenge. And we have an opportunity on a continuous basis to choose. Not necessarily what is happening, because some things are out of our control, obviously, but how we perceive it to be occurring, the reality of it. Because that which is happening is simply happening, but we are attaching the reality. You are attaching the reality. Without you connecting a reality to an experience, then it just simply is an experience. It's neither good or bad. It is part of a greater picture, a stronger rhythm than that which exists within our human psyche of categorization. As the simplest example, we see a blooming tree, we're so excited and happy, But then when it comes time for that tree to lose its leaves, then maybe some of us might get a little bit sad. But this is a part of a greater cycle. There's a reason to that dormancy which occurs. So in that, if we can agree that we are a part of nature, we are exactly the same. So there's moments in time, there is a definite upswing, there is a definite downswing. There's points along the swing where we feel strong and we can handle this downward moving motion, and there's points of the swing where we're not so strong and it's a little bit more challenging to handle that downward swing. So that's an inevitability, and I think that we can all agree. But within the down and the up, there's a constant, and that constant is really what I want to develop within your reality. And the constant, not because we are tricking ourselves to see a specific constant, but because we are training ourselves to let go of the storylines enough that we can just see the reality for what it is. That this constant is actually a sensation which is good for us. It is an experience that is joyous, that is harmonious, that actually promotes and also induces balance in a lot of ways. So it comes down to the psyche, really, and the psyche's training and how it relates to this present moment. So we all know that the human experience, in no matter what field, needs continuous upgrades. And I believe that life, as an experience, is no different. So it's a continuous upgrade of your education, of your understanding, of your development, so that then you can know how to keep up with this evolution. Because it is happening. With each generation, we're actually getting clearer, brighter, stronger. So for our generation, we must let go of the past organization of our brain, of our mind, of our psyche. That was our upbringings, that was our influences. So then we can keep up to the times of this incredible growth that's happening right now. An immense development. And ensure that we are not being pushed aside and marginalized. So, ideally, a leaf which falls from the tree catches a breeze and then falls so beautifully onto a body of water, let's say, and then floats on down the river and finds a beautiful nestling spot just off to the side. And there it can take its final resting place. So likewise, our own human experience, our psyche, we can let go and allow the experience that is happening right now within this present moment of growth and development to actually catch us. We want to catch that breeze, that stream of energetic flow, and allow it to place us perfectly as to where we need to be, so that we can just simply coast on through and find that final resting place. So of course, what is enabling this is a mind which is peaceful. A peaceful mind means that it has less conflict to move through. And less conflict means that you can start to see the true nature of your own psyche and how it is actually on your side. The peaceful qualities of the mind, which is enabling you to soften into the inevitable difference of opinions. That's an inevitability. To soften into the language barrier that sometimes comes up. both on the external world, but also, funnily enough, on the internal world. Language barrier, I'm not necessarily saying complete different language, but more the dialectic, the dialect that you speak. Your English is somehow slightly different than the English of the person sitting next to you if you cannot quite meet or understand each other. But this happens on the inside too. You're saying one thing and the mind is actually saying and doing another. It's a very strange phenomena. But it doesn't happen on a constant. There's moments within time that occurs. And in those moments in time, we must relate to it on such a level that there is one individual within the conversation, this is an internal one, remember, that is guiding it. So either we take the listening position or we take the speaking position. And oftentimes, this listening position becomes so well worn and understood that we become very passive within the relationship to the mind, within the relationship to thought, within the relationship to the emotion, and we become subject to. But this increase of our ability to become conscious involves the ability to speak to our mind, our thought, and our emotion with clarity, with direction, with assertion. And the reason for that is because you are the conscious individual within the equation. The mind is the tool. But oftentimes we are seeing it from the reverse perspective, that you are the tool, and that your mind is the conscious one. And this is a misnomer that is not any fault of one individual, it's actually the collective. Just like any science, the inner science, as the West is beginning to understand it, is progressive. So what science has claimed the mind to be and the mind's role and how it acts is allowed to evolve and is now evolving. We're seeing more and more clearly the fact that we are the conscious ones and we actually can communicate with the experience of the mind. So then how is it that you wish your mind to relate back to you? This is a very good question. How do you then wish to feel? This is another incredibly important question. And then we must develop, create gains within that direction. To become passive within a spiritual sense, to listen within a self-development arena, is not to listen to the jargon or even the searching for a very specific word. It falls under the arena of nonsense anyways. The nonsense of the mind. So we have to stop following the tendencies of the mind that pull us towards the misunderstanding and rather start to develop the experience that the mind has, because it's profound. Experience that the mind has, and begin to turn it slightly so that then it is enabled to serve what we wish to achieve. What is it that we wish to achieve? So one part it is the individual, and on the second part it is the collective. In order to get to a collective understanding, we must first come to a clear individual grounding of what that is. As we are developing an understanding, because remember, it is a growth formula, it doesn't need to happen all at once. once we get to gain that understanding of what it is that we wish to achieve, then we can bring it into a circuit of sensation that runs through the nervous system, consciously invoking it. So no longer are you walking down the street and then someone says something to you and then all of a sudden the mood turns. Or you have a thought and then all of a sudden the rest of the day goes sideways. Or you have a disbelief that you can do something and then you're just worrying. Gone are those days. These are actually leaving the human being and dawning this new age of conscious awareness. This is what we're doing, becoming consciously aware of listening to a very specific sensation, to a very specific space, to a very specific calling that we develop in the same way as when we look at it from a spiritual practice, where we look at it from a self-development arena. We must no longer be subject to. We must actually be the ones who are guiding the direction. So then what is it that we're listening to? Because what I'm suggesting is that there are multiple listening points. So if we're not listening to thought, we're no longer listening to emotion, we're no longer listening to the mind in terms of this very specific want that we wish to achieve, then what is it that we're listening to? That's a question that then must be defined by you. But if someone were to ask me that question, I would relate it back into a quality of sensation that's found within the space that you experience, void of thought, void of emotion, void of personality. And that it's coming from a higher form of this consciousness. It's a higher form of consciousness, is it not? So therefore, we must create a strategy then to marginalize and minimize the propaganda that the mind produces as nonsense and begin to invoke a quality of space that is this upgrade, this up-leveling, so that then we are present with this developing future of generations. An 8-year-old has less complications than you at this present moment. But that's far into the future. A 20-year-old also. Leaving are the days where we look up towards our parents or our grandparents and say, I'm going to be like that. These are gone. We are self-defining on the immediate. On the immediate. Cellular growth means that we are regenerating ourselves constantly. We talked about this at 10 million cells a day. This is an entire new experience every single year. This is radical shifts. And each one of those have a brain. These cells, they work together. So just like you have a brain. So now you must work together with this system. No longer being victimized or marginalized, but starting to arrive and be a part of this conversation, which is your human experience, which is consciousness, and also is the evolution of this human experience and consciousness. For no other important reason than you're actually here and living and you are a part of it anyways. The heat is on. So then it's about challenging yourself to meet this bar of consciousness. It is an opportunity for you to start to see the storylines, So the visual experience that we have is an influencer. The language, the dialogue that we hear is an influencer, and it's molding and shaping. So now this is where our meditation comes in. We apply, on a very sophisticated level, relaxation. With a sophisticated, grounded mechanism of relaxation, nothing can actually hold. It's impossible for that which you are moving through, you no longer need to keep hold. Because every time it holds, you just simply relax and it just sloughs off. Like the skin cell, finished, going. Now, if you can agree and you make this decision, then if it stays around, this is the undercurrent of our subconscious actually having a belief system within it. So what relaxation does within a meditative context is takes you deeper and deeper and deeper, which means closer and closer and closer to this sub-activity. The closer we get within the depth of our rest and relaxation, the more clearer we are able to experience the subtleties of the constant which exists within that space. The more times we visit the constant, then the greater connection we make, the stronger the loop, and the more possible we make it to bring that subtlety of the depth up to this present moment of sensory experience. So that we are continuously establishing ourselves within that subtle sensation as our base of understanding, which then meets any other sensation of joy, happiness, frustration that you could ever find. So this is the constant which creates the buffer. So this depth of relaxation, which is steeped within that beauty of sensation, is brought and sustained alive by your breathing. And we know this, but it's so simple that it just gets passed through, it gets brushed away, because it's just so normalized. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. For such a profound function to me. That means if it's on a 24-hour day, I can be present within my breathing on a 24-hour day. I can breathe in to that which I wish to invoke or bring to life on a 24-hour day. How? Through my decision. The greater ability, I can start to marginalize that which is distracting me within my meditation, that which is having dialogue that is not designed for my growth and development, that's showing me thoughts that are actually hurting me. If I can marginalize all of that, I'm actually improving my chance at success. So there is an element of evolution within this human consciousness, and it is in fact a survival of the fittest formula. But this fitness is one part external, which we've already played out, right? We ran away from all the saber-toothed tigers and your gene pool got you here. But now the game has gone inward. This is the final frontier, inner space. So now that same mechanism of fitness is still present. But now it's not the external muscles that we're developing, it's the internal muscles that are truly there. Slightly atrophied for some, but are all there. So we must strengthen these mind muscles and develop a realization that, yes, I can go here. This is good for me. No, I must heal this part. It is no longer good. But the phenomena that is occurring is that it does not exist until it exists, which means there's a refresh loop going on that which is your challenge. And that is mind-boggling to me as a human being and experiencing life. That there's a refresh on my challenge. How did that get there? What evolutionary purpose does that serve? I'm saying that there is no longer one. It's kind of done. So therefore, we evolve out of that. But if it doesn't exist until it exists, then at the moment of its inception into your mind, into your reality, you can just simply pair it, match it with that which is the diffuse. So Patanjali talks about whenever you have a negative thought, then replace it with a positive. And that's a simple matching. Nikki Fortin also talks about the same thing. Whenever there's a negative, match it with the positive and then see what happens. But on the immediate, if there's that refresh button, then it's actually vigilant. Because now it's, remember, the survival of that which is fit. So we've been feeding this loop for X amount of years, probably as long as you've been alive. But it doesn't exist until it exists. So therefore, we have all of this preparatory time of flexing, of deciding what is sensation that is good. So that when it comes time, we just simply close the loop, dissolve it, and continue on. You will become very good at that. I'm sure you've already experimented already. This is not new information. This is just simply the human being. So we want to take the experience of relaxation of the body and the life-giving sensation of the breath, join them together in a very classic way, and then shine that information up to the mind. And we should always remind ourselves of this, that the mind does not need to do it all. So people get so caught up in their mind, they're paralyzed lying there or crouched over or in a ball and just watching, saying, why am I suffering? Being a victim. But at that same moment in time, we can actually use the elements that we've been given as a physical experience, as a body that is developing sensation, and a breath that is constantly giving life, and we breathe into that, which is then making the sensation increasingly stronger, which is then enabling the mind to see the sensation and then ground back down into the body. This is embodiment. We want this body to be the playing field. On a spiritual level, within a yogic level, way, way, way long back, we would say that I am not my body. I want to cast off my body. I want to get rid of this body as soon as I possibly can. Now, this is for an individual who is a monk or a hermit, and they're done. They don't have any duties or aspirations or direction in the outside world. They are literally just getting ready to do exactly that, cast off. So sometimes there's a misnomer that starts to arise within a functioning individual here in society, where we say, oh, we must achieve that, but that's not actually the case. Here we must achieve embodiment. The ability to start to use this body as consciously as we possibly can, and to push the button that says this is the playing field. So all information passes through this physical body. All outward information passes through, all inward information passes through. So this is the playing field. This is the anchor of all experience. So we anchor sensation, we anchor rhythm of breathing, we anchor mind and its magnetism. We anchor the dynamic qualities that exist between the space, you and I, and the higher form of consciousness, all into one body. So within the depths of a yogic practice, you could say that I want to go to the temple. I want to go to a temple so I can develop my spiritual journey. But the truth of the matter is that you are actually the temple. You are the walking, talking deity. How do you experience your spiritual experience? When you go inside the temple, where does it all happen? And then when you leave the temple, can you invoke that experience again through an image from your mind, through a remembering, a reminiscing, a contemplation, which invokes an opening within your body that then you start to breathe rhythm into. And it's weaving together the Maya, literally, the gunas, that of the most subtle light, that of the energy, and that of the physical reality, weaving it together to make a sensation that brings you to that place of the temple. So if we can start to define this as being the temple, your physical body is the temple, and you are invoking the spiritual experience, how you define it, based upon your relationship and connection to a higher form of who you are, a higher form of self. And then pairing that to your inner experience and developing devotion, an offering. So an offering is a very well understood action to do within a temple. We want to give away something also. So what is it that you wish to give away? What is it that you wish to relinquish? What are you then offering for the sake of this experience within a temple? Meditation, walking outside, sitting by a river, all of this activity actually promotes the ability to retain that devotion to yourself, as though you were in a temple. If we can reframe ourselves just slightly, then we see that you are actually the most divine experience that could possibly happen. Why? Because you will not ever have another one. Only the ones that you have. As an example, please show it to yourself. How good can you make yourself feel at this moment in time? Can you show me? I mean elated. Not just happy, but joy. Can you achieve that? And make sure that you're just not deciding not to participate because you do not want to participate, but then that is case in point. So, show me. So remember, what is the mechanism that is allowing you to do this? Can you observe the moment that it's occurring and become really well understood as to how that's clicking over and happening? How does your sensation play a role in that? How does your breathing rhythm play a role in that? How does your mind play a role in that? And how does that higher form of connection literally play a role in that? So if one consciously decides that I'm going to feel better, decide that I'm actually going to become more joyous than I've ever been. This is actually a spiritual practice. This is what they're doing in those monasteries. It's not just by chance that all of a sudden, ding, somebody feels so good. It's actually a choice and then an action moving towards it with technique that you have. And if you don't, then you should learn it. Because that technique is actually the guardrails that one needs so that then they can stay upon their path. Very solidly, very groundedly, moving forward. And if you choose to step back, then you're choosing to step back. If you're choosing to feel that, then it is a choice that you're feeling it. Now that's high-end choosing, and that's very deep sub-activity which is occurring. So remember that this is a growth model. It is progressive. It can happen in an instant, but oftentimes you actually see yourself going through the motions of being the victim, of holding to the past traumas, influences, hurts. Tried your best but just didn't happen. All of that we must let go of. Why? Because it's just a reminder of something that you don't want or need anymore. This might sound crude, but I'm sure you all throw the garbage out every Wednesday or whenever it is that it's happening. The trash. Rare, I think, is the individual that says, I just want to save all these bags and keep them open and filling my space. I think none of us would do that. So the outer environment is so pristine. We understand that as a human species it's important, but we do not yet understand on a full collective level that the inner environment must also be as clean. Because we just didn't think that we could. We thought we were subject to a God that wants to put ill on us and make us suffer for something. Potentially you are the God, along with the temple. Not to challenge anyone's belief system, you can keep it exactly the way it is, but are you an active role within that? So it's a belief that there was 2 original sinners and now we're all kind of screwed here. Not to sound negative on anything, but just think of it logically here. And I can accept it if that is the case, but if I start to move the other way and make gains and start to marginalize those challenges to the point where they no longer exist, well then my logic says that, well, maybe I don't need to continue on with that belief system anymore. Maybe that developing understanding of what we are experiencing as God is also a science, and that it is allowed to evolve. The frame that says this is how it is can dissolve and then we can build a new one. This is why meditation is so incredibly good, because it wipes out all past belief system. That which is no longer needed will no longer stay. Why? Because meditation is working with the depth of your awareness, which is honed and designed for your growth and development. Now, this is surpassing your psychology. Over time, it actually influences perfectly the psychology. And it begins to thin out the challenge and bring rise to that which we need in order to get to this next step of our evolution, which is simply surviving the day until we find our bed, and then waking up in the morning. So just like we had to go find fire and food, we just have to survive till bedtime. And the surviving, this new survival, is actually this inside place. We must survive the environment that is inside of us, unscathed from moment to moment, from section to section, from morning to night, from night to day. If you say, yes, Rameen, I know all of this already and I actually practice it and I can do it, well then this is wonderful because you know what I'm talking about. But then the next step from there is, what can I actually manifest with this clarity of mind, this connection to a dynamism, the quality of the quantum field? What can be done? And that's based upon you. Maybe nothing needs to be done. Maybe you're actually complete and finished. And you're just going to enjoy yourself for yourself. Or maybe you start to test and measure the ability that exists within a clear mind, within a settled psyche, within the strength of your rhythmic breathing, and the cellular body that is just charged and continuously wishing to manifest. Any questions?
So I'd like to bring you back to when you talked about how we hold on to, the past and the hurt and the trauma, and how we have to take out the garbage. I struggle with letting go a little bit, and I was wondering if you could talk a bit more of, what we can do if that's not something that
comes so naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really good question, because it doesn't really come so easily for all of us, because based upon our training, based upon our influences, what is unsaid is often much more powerful than what could ever come out of a person's mouth. So in that, it's a relearning, an unlearning then to a relearning. And we have to choose within those moments of time, especially when it's quiet, like when you're sitting at home and nothing's going on, then you really can start to experience it all. So we have to choose between two forms of sensation. And you can do that. So there's the sensation that's associated to that which you're letting go. And in a tantric format, there's lots of visualization. So you can visualize that literally that sensation is leaving you. And then there's the other sensation that you feel that you want to promote. You want it to stay. And then you make that decision that I'm actually going to promote and make this one stay. And then you breathe into that as a loop. Inhale, exhale, and just feel it getting stronger while this is going away. And then when you're finished with it, you've had enough of the letting go, then you just simply cut it. Done. And hold strong your mind not to go in that direction. It doesn't need to. There is no direction. The mind is non-local. It's actually everything everywhere. So you just simply done. And then breathe again. Keep strengthening that loop. And then that should be just a simple practice that you take on every day for 5 minutes. 5-minute emptying out the trash. And you can sit in your favorite chair, your favorite posture, or sit in the sun, however you want, but you invoke it. You say it's time now to let go of it all. And you don't have to revisit all of these experiences. It can just be a dumping, and maybe your mind will perceive it in a certain way. It could be totally abstract. You could have stars coming out of you. You could have color coming out of you. You could have pure black coming out of you. It could be anything coming out of you that you so choose, or your mind is showing you and you say, yes, I agree. 5 minutes out. Strengthening that loop that you want to keep. As soon as that 5 minutes is over, cut it. Flex the inner mind muscle and continue on.
And how do we prevent it? Because we're kind of bringing attention back to it. And
yes.
How do we prevent it from not kind of coming over us and, feeding into it, like in a negative way?
Right. Then again, that's another decision. And we have that strength. We have that ability. So we just decide that we're not going to feed into it. And if it does feel as though you are feeding into it, then again, that's just an old program, but you're observing it. So you must create space from there. So sometimes we make the decision, but then the process has to catch up to the decision. So know that past experience is just simply ghosts. They have no tangible ability to influence you unless you so choose. So they're just ghosts in space coming to visit you, and it's a little bit scary because you experienced that before, so it's invoking an emotional response. So we just have to get used to it, meaning each time we do it, it's becoming lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, like depression. When depression goes around, but you become conscious of depression and the fact that you can actually work with it through awareness, you see the depression actually comes on. There's a 1 week buildup sometimes, and you're like, oh, I can see it. And then when it starts to visit you, you just take 3 steps back and just watch it. For as long as it needs to be there, you watch it, and then it fades away. And then it starts to come back again a month later. But now you're aware of it over here, and you see it progressing even a week and a half before. So you can do specific things that you know that are good for you, like yoga, meditation, breathing, eating well, sleeping right. So that when it comes, it's actually much lighter. It's more of an observation than anything. And then each time it goes around, it's becoming lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until it no longer influences you. And all of our mental challenges can be seen in that way because they're on loop systems. They only come for a particular amount of time, then they're gone again. But our awareness creates the space, and our disengagement of that, because we're deciding that these sensations are more important than those sensations attached to that challenge. So when we do that, these neural connections start to prune back because we're not exposing them to our awareness anymore. We don't find them important. So just naturally, the brain will prune them back. But it's just so embedded within a belief that I am that's when then people get stuck. But you must not. And come here as many times as you need to make sure that that loop stays firm and strong within what you wish to promote consciously. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're in the light, my friend.
Yes, thank you. That's life.
That's life, that's right.
And I was going to say that life is truly amazing when you look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more amazing than we can even imagine.
It's true.
And I was thinking about you were talking about the mind, and a friend of mine has this saying on her board that the mind is a good servant but a lousy master.
Mm-hmm. Very lousy master.
And I think in regards to what the other lady was just talking about letting go of all this stuff, we think that we think if we think more,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to solve all these problems.
That's right.
But it never works because, as you say, the mind just goes around and around. It's a fascinating thing, the mind, but it only knows what it knows from past experience.
That's right. What it's been exposed to.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And beyond that, it's this consciousness piece that is actually connecting. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And of course, the breathing is so central too.
Completely central. Without breath, there's no life.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And that's another mechanism that we want to be really tuned to. What happens when you inhale? What happens when you exhale? What do you see when you inhale? What do you see when you exhale? What are you sustaining as you inhale and exhale? And I can guarantee you that you are all sustaining good things when you breathe. You have no choice because your breath feels good. Now, potentially, this is an evolutionary mechanism to keep the human species going. So if anything, you have your thread of breath that you can maintain. But if we can become very clear and really accurate with ourselves as to what is manifesting as we inhale and exhale, then it becomes much easier. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We can do it. You can do it.
I was just wondering, sometimes for me, I just feel like numb. Like I just get a block and I'm breathing into the sensation and it feels amazing. But what is coming up when you just get that block? How do you get past trying to think about it and noticing it? And
That's a very good question. And the short answer is just keep breathing. And a longer equation is to apply movement back into the body. Because oftentimes we feel dead zones of sensation within the body that then we can bring back to life through postures, through movement. And that's a good thing. So the more we can just simply connect the nutrients back in, then like anything, if there's dead soil, let's say, if you just start to apply the right ingredients, like planting a few trees to retain the water, and then the proper light, the proper water, maybe a couple of other plants, that you have all of these minerals that are necessary to give health back in again to a soil which is dead, then it just comes back to life. But the body is that same organic matter, that all it needs is the right ingredients, and then it all just comes back to life. You're welcome. Any last questions?
A friend from Victoria just wanted me to ask you a question for him about what is grief, and is it quite a natural process to grieve?
I believe that there is a natural process to grief. Grief is the experience of loss. Generally, a loss of something that is actually very precious and important to an individual. The length of time spent within the experience of grief is based on whether or not you can let go of the story, whether or not you can come to terms with even what happened, and start to feel again that you're still here and present, and that there is a life that exists outside of that loss. The how? Yoga and meditation, because that's what I'm speaking on. But it can be any technique that increases your zest for life again, without superimposing. It has to be natural, ideally, because you actually want to gain the sensitivity as a human being and not be afraid of that sensation of loss, but start to see it for what it is, a process of letting go. Ceremonial, very, very ceremonial, very sacred. To just simply be pulled through that which was existing out to the other side where your new life exists. So we quicken that by relaxing. We quicken that by breathing. We quicken that by recognizing the strengths of your mind and that you have muscles there. And that there's a time to dump and let go of it all, and then there's a time to just cinch it up and get strong. And that's all natural process. Okay. Shall we sit? The simplest form of technique is for us to simply start to relax into the natural experience of the body, the natural tendency of the body, and what the body is continuously teaching. And that is relaxation. So once we find our skeleton and we stack our bones, we can just simply soften. And allow our body, within its quiet, to teach your mind how to relax. The longer you stay within your meditation, the greater opportunity your body and its relaxation has to influence positively your mind. Keeping the eyes closed, let's bring full deep breaths into the body. Keeping the eyes closed, bring your gaze into the space just there in front of you. And with a soft intensity, maintain the integrity of the space. We must gain the ability to retain the integrity of the space, uninterrupted by any thought. Starting now. Keeping the eyes closed, soften the gaze. And then very gently, slowly, allow the eyes to open. We must remember that we are made up of 1 trillion cells, and these cells are on a constant refresh. Constant refresh. These cells which are refreshing are in charge of your brain, the areas of your brain that stimulate your memory, your thought, your emotion. And that in that refresh, we're gaining the opportunity to choose forever more consciously that which we feel is important, that which we feel is good. Ideally, no longer are we subject to, oh, well, I have negative thoughts. Or, oh, well, life doesn't ever go the way that I want. This is old patterning, ideally, that is now marginalizing and dissolving. Realizing that gaining the ability to maintain the quality of space at the end of your meditation is actually the developing ability that you are acquiring to flex that inner mind muscle, to choose that I am no longer thinking this way. With these two things combined, the cellular renewal and your ability to hold your own space is actually growth and development. So we are choosing, we are deciding how we wish our life to be. That is a truth. On a spiritual level, you see a monk, the monk is choosing to pursue enlightenment. And within that joy, within that happiness, within all of that really good stuff. But it's developmental. It's developmental. So as these cells are refreshing, we're helping the cells along by consciously deciding that this is what we want to do, and realize that it takes a moment to just click all the way over. In one part, it's because you as the individual are deciding that you're going to stay in the loop, and now you're deciding to get out of it. But on the other part, it's societally driven. Exposure. So deciding where you're going to hang out with, where you're going to hang out, who you're going to talk to, what you're going to take in, and what you're just going to leave aside. These are all really important things. Exactly like that. Thank you very much, everyone. Namaste.